When I was a kid, I was very sensitive to being treated like a person, like a human being. I remember reacting very strongly to adults who talked down to me, like as if I were less significant or less interesting simply because I was a child. And when I got my son, I was really focused on treating him as a human being. It was a promise I gave to myself when I was 15. I decided that I would always remember what it was like being a kid and being talked down to by adults. And so it became more and more and more important to me. And it was really clear to me that I didn't feel like sending my kid to a kindergarten when he was just a baby, to some kind of nursery. They call it here in Mexico guarderia, which is basically a place where you can park kids, park small babies. So I stuck with him for several years before doing what had to be done, which was a more respectful school for him, because I knew school was coming up, and I was just appalled by seeing what they were doing in the Mexican conventional school system. And so it was an interesting journey for me, because I really wanted to focus on creating a space that was super respectful for children. Um, and it's one thing when you work with kids and you're there with them and you can guarantee that what is going to happen in this space actually will be like that. And I think that at my first school project, I was super lucky, because I found this amazing woman who was just so open and so ready to learning. And so with her, I was collaborating very, very closely for the first 3 years. And then we moved and I started up my second school. And there I basically lost control over what was going on inside the walls of the school. And I realized little by little that even though it was so clear to me that it was going to be a respectful place, it was basically impossible for me to have a say or to influence in any way the grown-ups that were working there. And I could little by little see the effects that that had on my son. And it's really important to me to be clear. This had nothing to do with the Waldorf pedagogy that we had chosen for the kids. I believe that all of these different pedagogies have huge benefits for kids. But I realized that as long as the adults were in charge, in the sense that we know what's best for you, when the adults themselves didn't really unprogram themselves, when they didn't confront themselves with how it was for them to grow up and how we can actually treat kids with a lot more respect and creating safe surroundings for them, well, then it's kind of, it doesn't really matter what you give the kids, what kind of teaching philosophy you'll go for, if it's Montessori or Waldorf or Freinet or conventional schooling. It doesn't matter if you as an adult don't work with yourself and how you grew up and your own beliefs. And so when I went into self-directed education and unschooling, it became even clearer to me that the work that has to be done is really on a level of the adult. It is me as an adult that needs to ask those very, very serious questions, like, why are we doing this? Is what I'm doing becoming a hindrance, an obstacle in this child's development, or am I actually supporting autonomy, independence, initiative taking, creativity, problem solving. Like, how am I as an adult affecting what's going on for the child? And so it has been a really, really interesting process, because all of the things that I could observe I didn't like in the conventional system, the stuff that I didn't like in the Montessori system, having grown up in the Montessori system, what I didn't like in the Waldorf system, some things had to do with the persons that were there, definitely. So I don't want to put it all on the teaching philosophy per se, but something happens when the teaching philosophy is something that is based upon what we adults believe is best for the child, what we adults believe that the child needs, instead of going back to listening to the child, trying to understand where the child comes from, trying to understand what the behavior is based upon. Why is the child acting like this? What underlying unsatisfied need is actually motivating the kid to behave in this specific way? What does it look like when a child is learning naturally, organically? Like all these questions that I believe aren't being they aren't being made in the system. Like, we adults, we don't usually ask ourselves these questions, and I think that it is vital that we do, because only then can we go from an adult directed activity to an activity that is being directed and chosen by the child himself or herself. And what I have come to believe in this quest of trying to find like the best for the kids that would work really good for a majority, and maybe actually for everyone, even though that might be unrealistic, is that I do believe that the kids are human beings, and they should have the same rights as adults. They should have the right to make their own decisions. They should have the right to fuck up. They should have the right to learn to spot the consequences of their decisions. They should have the right to become responsible little by little. It's a lot to put a lot of responsibilities on a small child, but on a bigger child, you can do that more and more. You can let them try it out. And as soon as it doesn't work, you need to be there as an adult and stand there for them and take on that responsibility. But I really honestly believe that children are people, children are human beings. And if we are going to treat them as human beings, we need to reflect a lot more on what is stopping them, what is stopping us from not just letting go of control, and how our fear of failure, our fear that our kids won't be able to become successful adults, is actually becoming an obstacle in how we treat the kids, and that suddenly we don't really treat them as human beings, but rather as just children, persons with less value or less importance than adults. And so, yeah, for me, this is the biggest thing, I think, in everything that I do. I really just want to go back to the child, center it around the child, look at the child, try to understand the child, and treat the child the same way that I would like to be treated. So yeah, there is so much more to say about this, but that is also why I'm offering My Child and Me, this time in Denmark at Bornholm, also in Stockholm, Mitt Barns Bästa, in March. And I hope to see you there. This is something that I think that all adults should actually talk about. If you work with children, or if you have kids, there are conversations to be had. There are reflections that need to be made. And all of that you will experience in this workshop. So I hope to see you there.